Hey everyone, and thank you for clicking on this tutorial where we talk about color canceling, color removal, desaturation of colors, getting rid of colors we don't want in photos or just art in general when we're talking about photography and design and compositing. My name is Mark DiMattei, and you can find me on Instagram at markdarts. That's MARKD_ARTS. I'm an illustrator right now. I made this whole document up for everybody because there's a lot more to understanding how to we could just get right into doing it. If you just want to skip and see how I do it, you can just go to the second half of the video about. But there's a lot more to this lesson and this tutorial than just showing you. There's a lot more background knowledge, and this is going to help everybody in the long run if you understand this knowledge. So I made this document here, and I'm basically just going to be a little professor right now. But photography is painting with light, so it's not really just about clicking a button on a camera. It's not about knowing your aperture, your ISO, and your shutter speed. There's a lot more aspects to photography. It's an art form. It relies on composition. It relies on story, mood, color theory, and all these different things that make up an image that you may or may not know about. So if I scroll down here, we can see that we have additive and subtractive, and what that refers to is light. And we're talking about color and light now, whether it's ink or with actual light. So when it comes to color, you have CMYK, which is basically print, ink, color. You have cyan, magenta, yellow, black, right? So those four colors, when it comes to the physical world, ink, those four colors are going to allow us to acquire any other pigment we can think of. And if we look on the left side, we have red, green, and blue, which is RGB. RGB has to do with light and white light. It has nothing to do with actual physical form. It is all emitted through light emitting diodes or LEDs, white light. And we can even go break it down into the rainbow and the color spectrum. And yes, I stole some images from Google, just please don't yell at me. It just gets the point across. But if we look at the color spectrum here, our white light is broken up into all these colors of the rainbow. But the thing is that all those colors are made up of red, green, and blue, hence our RGB. What is additive and subtractive? How does it apply? So if you were to take red, green, and blue as additive light and put them all together, if you were to mix them like you were to mix ink, right, or paint, if you were to mix this red, green, and blue light perfectly at the right pigment and the right tone and the right hue and brightness, you would reach a perfect white color or perfect white light. Now, on the other hand, in subtractive, if you were to mix ink such as magenta, cyan, and yellow, if you were to mix them all up at 100% saturation, 100% hue, you would achieve a black pigment and not a white pigment. So all you're doing is mixing, and it's just getting heavier and heavier and darker. When on the other hand, you are adding light in RGB to acquire white light. So if you add them together, you get white light. If you add them together in ink, you get black. I'm an illustrator, and I applied a screen opacity adjustment to the top layer, which is the left side, this left color. And you can see if I pull this away, it's really only two shapes. There is not three rectangles here. I have 1 and 2. So what you're seeing is the red rectangle on top of the blue one, but you're seeing that perfect magenta, just like our color wheel and RGB here. If we combine red and blue only with light, if we use additive light, we achieve magenta as our outcome. And if we go down the list, if we take blue and green, just like before, I only have 2 rectangles here, blue and green make cyan. Now, again, with the red and green make yellow, 2 rectangles here. Let's go to the cyan, magenta, yellow, black, our CMYK. On the other hand, I have the left rectangle with a darken transparency mode, because screen is obviously for light. Darken is going to be our mixing our added pigments together. So if we take our magenta and our cyan ink and we darken them together, we are going to get that blue tone. If we take our magenta and our yellow, we only have 2 rectangles here, we're going to get red. And if we take our cyan and we take our yellow, we are going to get green. Again, 2 rectangles here. And this is only proving my point that even in other design softwares and other ways of creating art, whether it be photography or video or graphic design or photo, whatever you're doing, this is going to apply regardless. This is a theory of science. This is how we see, and this is how the makeup of colors is happening around us, whether it's in a screen, whether it's in real life. This is all actually applicable to the lesson that we will get to. And I also have something cool down here. These aren't just white and black rectangles. Yeah, you guessed it, they are 3 rectangles stacked on top of each other with the transparency mode screen to add up to white. And you can see, look at that. And that is what I wanted to show you. Surprise. So I have on the right side too, CMYK, right? Black. I just have cyan, magenta, yellow. That's it. Pretty cool, right? So that's the basis of what we are talking about. So now there's a little bit more to that. So now that we have that understood, right? We're not forgetting that. We remember this. The next thing is we want to understand the sides of our color wheel and the different colors that exist on the color wheel as a whole. Now we're just talking about the vague subject of color and the color wheel. So we have warm colors and cold colors, a left and a right side of the color wheel. One, it makes you feel kind of warm and cozy, you know, you're red hot. We have orange, kind of the sun. And then we have the cold side. We have, you know, blue, winter, green. It's kind of breezy, you know, it's outside. There's a slight chill to it, you know? So we as humans see certain colors, certain different hues as more intense to the eye as others. And red and blue and green are just three main tones that are super attractive to the human eye, which is really important because when we have all these different colors, you know, what is more attractive and what is not is going to play a role in how much weight and visual weight and how heavy, you know, how much you're gonna stare at it in a piece of art. So that also makes kind of, we don't want the wrong colors in areas that we want focus, because that's going to create almost, unless that's specifically what you're trying to do, that's almost going to create some sort of disarray when you look at it. And we can talk about this in a little bit when we start to go edit photos. But this is going to basically wrap me into this part of my chart here. Warm colors proceed and cold colors regress. And what that means is in art, when we have, let's say, a red color next to a green color, right? The green cold tone is going to naturally fall backwards and fall kind of behind the red color. The red is going to be more attractive. It's a warm, it's a brighter color. You know, this is not the case every time depending on the brightness, but for the most part, the law is that warm colors will create almost a foreground in your eye, and the cold colors will almost fall behind and create a background in comparison to those warm colors. So in art, you might find a lot more foregrounds with warmer colors, possibly brighter colors, or warm colors with heavy contrast with cold colors right on top of each other in the foreground, and then maybe further adding cold and warm mixture in the background. But if we look at, you know, just to further re-emphasize this, we have Starry Night here with Vincent van Gogh. And we have a lot of green in the front, but it's mixed with a lot of brown, right? It's a lot of red. And then we have a lot of green right behind it, still kind of in the foreground. There's reds and greens, right? There's reds and greens mixed, which is creating contrast. And then we have all of that blue, all that cold tone in the background, kind of all falling back. And this is a pretty flat painting, you know, there's really not a lot of dimension created in the tones and the actual colors. What you're seeing dimension from sizing and perspective and horizon line. But the color is what is creating extra depth. The blue is adding more background depth, right? And that orange in the sky is popping out at you because it's very bright in person. The stars are bright. You kind of stare at the stars. They kind of make sense to be orange, plus a contrast with the blue. You know, there's all color theory. Understanding where colors may want to be placed naturally is important. Hence, warm colors proceed and cold colors regress. And that's going to help our photo editing and our color later. But we're almost there. Just bear with me again. If you want to skip, you can go skip. But I feel like this is an important lesson. You clicked on the tutorial, not me. You know, you want to learn, not me. I'm teaching. This is the last part of the quick little mini lesson before we actually work on some photography. That gets us to the final statement of understanding complementary colors. And this is the most important thing, if anything, I wanted you to get out of that entire lesson. Complementary colors are opposites on the color wheel. So purple to yellow, you know, red to green, blue to orange. Most people know those. If not, that is a very important thing. Opposites on color wheel create extremely vibrant mixtures because they make our human eyes vibrate at a very fast rate because they're just very exciting. It's just something about the way those two colors, when you have complementary colors next to each other, makes our eyes kind of bounce and freak out and kind of be really attracted to it, almost so much that it's too much to look at sometimes. You're like, oh my God, get that like red and blue 3D thing away from me, you know? It's just like kind of trips you out. Same thing with complementary colors. It's sometimes almost too bright, and that's why you see a lot of sports teams use complementary colors because it's so attractive. It's so bright, and it's easy to see from far away. It's just more entertaining when you're in a live setting like that, possibly, but there's just a lot of color theory in that alone. So if we kind of look at what we did before when we were pulling these squares away from these stacked squares, it's kind of the same thing with complementary colors, but only when you mix complementary colors in light, only light, let's be real here. Now we're talking about light, I just want to put that out there. In reference to photography and color and light, when we mix complementary colors, you're going to get cancellation of those colors. They cancel each other out. They're complete opposites. You mix them together, they are completely making zero. And by that, when you mix them, they're going to be gray, they're going to be brown, and it's going to be it's almost going to look desaturated. It's going to be really cool actually to see how two vibrant colors can possibly come together and create almost like a gray neutral tone. And that is exactly how we're going to get rid of color and cancel color out, and understanding basically how white balance works in a camera. And that's all summing this up. White balance is basically your tint and your temperature, whether it's blue to orange or purple to green. So it's able to gray out. If our photo is too orange or too blue, you can gray out some blue or orange depending on how much you pull it to left or right, cold or warm. Same thing with the magenta and the green, or that light kind of neon green. Those are complementary colors. You can see this magenta and this neon green, and that's our tint. So that's going to allow you to slide left and right, complementary color, negate out certain purples and greens we don't want to see. And if you're kind of putting everything together now, you're like, oh, maybe this makes sense.